Is the world fair? What do you think? Good question. Is the world fair? I would say absolutely not. And I think actually one of the, if I would say, meanings of life or living a meaningful life for any of us is to try to make the world more fair, to make the world more just. Fairness, justice, of course, these can be debated what that means. One way I think we can, for me, determining fair and just is that everyone has their basic needs met from childhood and even going forward for all of their life, and that we reduce and work to eliminate all unnecessary suffering. By unnecessary suffering, meaning that if people are starving and there's food, that should be, we can eliminate that. If people have certain illnesses and there is the medication, but because of things like money or getting the medication there, that as a world we should work towards that. So that's what I mean by unnecessary suffering. Even in someone who has all the money in the world, there's some things, some suffering, physical and emotional, you can't stop. People are researching all sorts of treatments for medical issues. I mean, we just saw it with COVID. The vaccine came out after many people had lost their lives. People continue to lose their lives. Again, much could have been done to deal with the virus in different ways, but still, for some time, we didn't have anything that we could do to as a vaccine. So what I mean by unnecessary suffering, it means that if we have the means to take care of our fellow world citizens, we make sure that we do that. Again, if people don't have water or they don't have sanitation for certain things, I think as a world community, global community, we should take care of that and make that a priority. I think going back to the previous segment about COVID, I think we saw something, and I mentioned this many times back then too, something I thought was beautiful. There's always some darkness or some light, silver lining, was that I think people came together, at least to some degree, to help one another, in the sense that if you look at what was going on, many people stayed home even though they were far less vulnerable to get sick or to get very sick from coronavirus, but they were making sacrifices for other human beings. And I think that's something that should be an accepted part of life, that we make sacrifices for one another in different ways. It doesn't mean we sacrifice everything, but that we consider that it's not something that, well, it's not hurting me, so I don't care what happens to you. And as we generally see in the book, actually, The Sum of Us by, I think it was Heather McGhee that I talked about last week, we might think it's affecting others, but you know, the planet and really the whole world, but is like a ecosystem. Things affect one another. If you pollute one area, it's going to come back to you in some way. If you even create hate and violence somewhere, it likely will come back to you in some way. So it does affect you anyway, but nonetheless, I would hope that we think about how to make the world more fair. And, you know, something I hear sometimes about this when people say, they use this phrase, well, life isn't fair, as a justification for something. Oh, you know, some kids are experiencing homelessness in a wealthy city like Los Angeles. Well, you know what? Life just isn't fair. And I think that's a very kind of cheap way to get out of really looking at what's going on. Yes, life isn't fair, but we should strive to making it more fair. You know, I'm sure if you told that same person, they said life isn't fair, and he said, oh, give me all of your money. Okay, life isn't fair. And give me that and give me this. Life isn't fair. They would fight back. They would say this is not okay. They would probably be thinking something like this isn't fair. So to say that as a justification for the way the world is, I think, is just an easy way of trying to not look at the actual situation. Yes, there are injustices in the world. Things will always probably be a little bit unfair. It won't be that it will be perfectly fair, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't strive towards making the world more fair. And to me, that's something that all of us as human beings should be looking at. How can we make the world more fair? Who is suffering unjustly? What are sometimes the invisible victims to things that are going on, sometimes the visible victims of things that are going on? How can we try to promote justice in the world? So I don't think that the world is fair, but I do think that we should make, all of us should make that a priority, try to make the world more fair.